Doctor saved the life of an unknown boy, but when he saw the child's mother, he fell down in shock. Paul entered the compartment, put away his suitcase, and comfortably settled on the cushioned seat. He liked to travel by train. The steady beat of the wheels had a calming effect on him. The window glimpsed alternating landscapes. The only thing he disliked about such trips were the intrusive traveling companions he sometimes encountered, but so far there was no one in the compartment but him. Paul had to travel frequently on business trips. By his 35s, he had a reputation as one of the best child cardio surgeons in the country. From the neighboring compartment, a gushing child's laughter was heard, followed by a soothing female voice. It was impossible to understand the words, but Paul realized that the mother was trying to calm her overly rambunctious little boy. The man smiled. He loved children, although he still did not have a family. He had not managed to meet a woman for a serious relationship. Perhaps his busy schedule was to blame. His sister often joked that he was married to his work. And so it was. The man devoted 90% of his time to medicine. As a successful surgeon, Paul got used to the fact that women gave him signs of attention. From time to time, he had short affairs, but none of them could captivate the man for long. It wasn't always like this. During his student years, Paul had a great love of his life, which he recalled almost every day. They met by chance at a supermarket. A girl standing in front of Paul in line had her bag torn, and her purchases fell right at his feet. The young man rushed to help the stranger pick them up, and they simultaneously bent over and accidentally bumped into each other's foreheads. The girl rubbed her bruised spot, and Paul looked into her beautiful turquoise eyes and realized that something was happening to him. Paul was considered one of the most advanced students of the course, and he was very passionate about science. One day, he was sent to a seminar in the capital for 2 weeks. Upon returning home, the first thing Paul did was go to Zeta with a gift for her and a bouquet of flowers for her grandmother, who had raised her granddaughter alone all her life. When he saw his beloved, the guy noticed that immediately something had changed. She looked pale and anxious, spoke coldly, acted aloof, didn't even hug him, and when tried to do so, she pushed him away with determination. Zeta suggested him to go outside, pointing with her eyes meaningfully to her grandmother's room. Paul understood that she wanted to talk without witnesses, and they went to the park where they loved to walk on warm summer evenings. Without any preamble, Zeta calmly told him that they had to break up. Paul could not believe what he heard, and the girl, without giving him anything to say, added that they were too different. Paul didn't recognize his Zeta, who had always been loving, caring, attentive, kind, and nice. He could not believe that she could just have an affair with someone else while he was out of town. Without looking into Paul's eyes, the girl asked him not to take it so close to his heart and turned around to walk away. Paul watched her figure moving away and then rushed after her, began to beg for her to come back, shouting that he would forgive her, trying to explain what she meant to him. But it was as if the girl was fenced off from him by an invisible wall through which the guy couldn't break. For a while, Paul tried to win Zeta back. He waited outside her home in the clinic where she worked, often called, sent flowers, but the girl remained unapproachable and cold. Gradually, work and study took over completely and Paul gave up. Paul began to undergo an internship at the Children's Cardiosurgical Center. There were sick babies and their exhausted mothers with anxious eyes in front of his eyes all the time now, and he knew that he could save them, make these people's lives happy. And then in the supermarket many years ago, Zeta had once noticed Paul. Something in his appearance immediately caught her, something she had never felt before. When they began dating, Zeta liked everything about him. A sharp mind, passion for a noble profession, a sense of humor. Paul gave her warm love and care, and she felt happy and protected. It was a wonderful and unfamiliar feeling. Her grandmother from the age of 3 raised Zeta. The girl had no father, and her mother kept trying to arrange her personal life. One day, she received a marriage proposal from a Spanish man with whom she had been communicating through the internet for several months. The woman happily flew off to the warm southern fairy tale, promising that she would take Zeta back later. But in Spain, Zeta's mother was expecting all the same domestic and financial difficulties, and soon she had a child there and then another. The woman hardly helped her daughter with money, and she did not take her daughter to Spain. She arrived once every 3 or 4 years, brought a gift of clothes, and all on this. Zeta graduated from nursing school and started working. She chose this specialty because of her grandmother. And then Paul came into the girl's life, who became her whole world. He often talked about their future, promised that they would definitely create a strong family, but first he wanted to complete his internship. One day, Zeta didn't feel very well and suddenly realized it was worth taking a test. The test was positive. At first, she was excited that they were having a baby, but then doubts came. Paul had said so many times that this was not the time for a family. The girl was sure that the new circumstances would greatly affect his life. He would have to work hard, eventually give up his scientific work, and become a mediocre doctor in the end. Zeta had no doubt that Paul would never leave her with a child, but she still did not dare tell him the news. When Paul was offered to go to a seminar for 2 weeks, she decided that when he returned she would tell him everything, and they would certainly think of something to give the baby everything and not to ruin Paul's career. But life had other plans. That ill-fated evening, Zeta was returning home from work. It was drizzling rain and the road was not very well visible. The girl was crossing the roadway when suddenly a black car darted out of the darkness. The car only slightly hit her, but the girl was thrown against a nearby lamppost. The operation was performed on time but not without complications. The doctor treating her lowered his eyes and said she would most likely not have children. Zeta came out of the hospital devastated and angry at the whole world. Most of all, her anger was directed at Paul. If he hadn't been so into working and education, if he hadn't put off starting a family, none of this would have happened. She decided to break up with him. Zeta was unimaginably painful to play indifference repeatedly in front of her beloved man, when more than anything else in the world she wanted to fall into his arms. Paul finally gave up, never knowing that they might have had a baby. He soon moved to the capital and his career took off. Soon Zeta really met another man. She met Jan directly at work where she was taking his blood for analysis. He was a little older than Zeta, therefore he treated her somewhat patronizingly. Jan worked on a rotational basis as an operator in an oil company. 1 month he was home and 1 month on the rig. Jan considered his job as a way to make money and nothing more. It was completely unlike Paul's enthusiasm. Soon they were married, but Zeta did not love her husband, she just liked him. Everything was going pretty well for the couple, except that they could not conceive a child. Zeta remembered the diagnosis but wished for a miracle. It seemed to her that a baby would make her happier and she would finally have a close family member. Jan was not worried about an heir and encouraged his wife that they were already living well. But it was easy for him to say so because his first marriage he had 2 daughters whom he loved tenderly and always tried to pay attention to. One day a miracle finally happened. Zeta realized that she was pregnant again. When the ultrasound revealed that it was a boy, Jan's joy had no limits. As a father of 2 daughters, he dreamed of a son, but the birth was unsuccessful. The baby nearly suffocated and was rushed to the intensive care unit. Doctors did not give any prognosis for a few days, but eventually the baby survived. However, because of the hypoxia, his brain was damaged. Zeta was warned that the baby would never be completely healthy. At first, the baby did not differ from other newborns, but over time, the difference became apparent. Little Max did not sit up like other babies at 6 months and did not walk at 1 year of age. He screamed a lot, slept a little. He needed daily massages and procedures. Zeta had to undergo a long and frequent rehabilitation program with him. By the age of 2, the child was diagnosed with cerebral palsy. Predictions were contradictory. Some doctors considered Max promising, others advised acceptance and predicted regression. Jan couldn't stand such a life and left the family. Zeta did not despair and gave all her strength to her son, and now she was taking her son to annual rehabilitation. A woman looked out of the window at the passing fields, villages, and forests while the boy fidgeted beside her. He'd already turned 6. Suddenly there was a wheezing sound and Zeta turned around abruptly. The boy was turning blue and gasping for air. In his palm was clutched a bracelet made of pearls, a gift from Paul and Zeta's favorite piece of jewelry. The bracelet tore and the beads bounced on the floor and apparently Max swallowed one of them. A frightened Zeta desperately tried to help her son, but nothing helped. The boy began to lose consciousness. A group of passengers crowded around her and gave their advice. A man broke through the crowd. He confidently grabbed the boy, laid him face down on his lap, and slammed him on the back several times with the edge of his hand. With a resounding thud, the bead fell to the floor. The boy started breathing, the wheezing stopping. Zeta sat down on the floor exhausted and burst into tears from the fright she'd suffered. When she looked at her savior, she was shocked. Paul was standing in front of her. He helped her up and sat her down. Paul was smiling at his beloved Zeta, guessing what thoughts now raced through her head. The man looked at the boy with an experienced eye. Everything was not so hopeless and he was sure his colleagues would help. Paul realized that he did not want to let Zeta and Max out of his life and was ready to help raise the sick child. He carefully asked about the boy's father and Zeta told him about the divorce. The man was happy to hear that because his prosperous and full life had always been lacking something, and now he realized what it was. Her. He realized that together they would overcome all problems and finally be happy.